You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You got troubles, then I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me.
Hello, Pixar fans, and welcome to my next review. Today I am going to be reviewing Toy Story 2. Yes, the sequel to Pixar's very first film, and their most original film, well, their first original film, Toy Story. This film was released 4 years later in 1999. Given the success of the original Toy Story and the fact that it launched Pixar into, many different, into uncharted territory, as I said before, and the fact that we also had a Bug's Life in between as well, they then decided to work on Toy Story 2 to make a sequel. Obviously this met with some pressure, and actually a bit of history. There was actually a time when Toy Story 2 was in development hell. At the very beginning, the directors, the animators, the writers, they just couldn't get it. They just couldn't get it where they wanted it to be. They had a script that they weren't happy with. They thought, we have something, but it's not good. And they really tried. They really sort of turned the whole thing around in the end and came out with this. And yeah, what can I say? So, before I go on to what I like about the film, I will just mention about the plot. So, the basic plot of Toy Story 2 is that, continues after the first one. Andy is going to a cowboy camp or something for summer, for a week or something in summer. He plans to take Woody with him. Woody cannot find his hat, and then he gets all sort of worried and stressed about it, and then due to an accidental circumstance, Woody's arm is ripped, and Andy does not wish to take him, then decides not to take him to camp. This depresses Woody a little bit, and then as the story goes on, we meet Wheezy, this little penguin whose voice box is damaged and he keeps coughing, and it's quite funny. And then he's chucked into the yard sale. Woody, with the help of the dog Buster, tries to rescue Wheezy, and then Woody is accidentally, well, he's stolen by Al, who is this owner of this sort of retail toy store called Al's Toy Barn, and he plans to add Woody to the collectible set of the Roundup gang that he has, and he wants to basically earn his millions by taking Woody and the Roundup gang and placing them in a museum in Tokyo, Japan. And then the other toys go on a rescue mission. Sorry. Fucking messages every time I record a video. Sorry, as I was saying, yeah, so the toys vow a rescue mission for Woody, and then Woody has to, it ultimately comes down to an ultimatum. Woody has to decide where he belongs. Does he want to go with the Roundup gang and be in a museum, or does he want to go back with Andy and cherish whatever time he has left with Andy? And that really is it. We also meet the new characters like Stinky Pete, Prospector, Bullseye, and Jessie. Jessie's had a bit of an estranged past. She's had a bad experience with an owner when she's been basically neglected and then sold away, and then she's been in storage for a long time. So yeah, and then Stinky Pete, who doesn't want to see, who wants the Roundup gang to basically become a thing again, as the Space Toys came in and took over profit. So yeah, you get the idea. And then it's a whole race adventure to stop that from happening. So, Toy Story 2. This is a wonderful film. This film is a fantastic sequel, and considering how brilliant the first one is, they did a damn good job with this one. I mean, I really like this film. I think because so much happens, it moves at such a momentous pace, and there's always something happening. And, you know, what I essentially love about the second film more than, let's say, the first, is the fact that there's conflict. Not that there isn't conflict in the first, there is conflict. There is a lot of conflict. With this, there is a almost three-dimensional conflict. You know, there's... all the characters have their own decisions that they make, you know. It's ultimately... there are elements of it which are reversed, like, you know, Buzz basically trying to tell Woody what Woody told him in the first movie, that you're a toy. You're not meant to be a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. You're a toy. It makes for such good drama. And, you know, Woody's decision would affect the entire film, and also the way the other characters would continue to live their lives. Because ultimately, Woody's dilemma is the heart of the film. He's like, what do I do? You know, I don't want to abandon these guys. I don't want to put them in storage, but I don't want to desert Andy. He's my owner, you know, and all the other toys, you know. It's a really interesting conflict, and you really see almost Woody at his wit's end. You know, when he realizes what happened to Jesse, he then begins to see, okay, maybe I should think about what I'm doing. You know, he's doing everything on a whim. He's not really sure what to do. His head is a bit of a mess, and he's still a bit, you know, all over the place. However, I think Buzz has matured very well into a great character. Buzz is great in this film. He sort of leads the rescue mission, which I think is another interesting aspect of this movie, is that it's more, it feels, the scope feels bigger. Because the first movie, it was very much consensus to Sid's house, Andy's house, and Pizza Planet. It was an adventure, but it wasn't on it wasn't as huge a scale as this. And then obviously the third film will be an even bigger scale. But for Toy Story 2, they go far out. They go on an adventure to rescue Woody, and it's so much fun to watch. One of my particular favourite scenes of this particular instalment is when they're crossing the road with the cones over them. I find that very entertaining and just incredibly funny to watch. It's fantastic. And also when they're running through the vent systems, all of that stuff is fantastic. And the comedy is fantastic. Whoever wrote the script did a fantastic job with the comedy, and the actors do have great timing. I mean, they're all so good. I mean, one of my particular moments was the Star Wars reference, if you get what I mean. The Zurg and Buzz moment when he's like, "I'll never give in, you killed my father." "No, Buzz, I am your father." "No!" I laughed my arse off at that. That was absolutely fantastic. For the most part, this movie is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's dramatic. It's got the heart. That's the thing I've always admired about Toy Story, is that, I mean, I never fully appreciated it until I was older, obviously, but it's a film about toys, obviously, so, you know, you're like, okay, this is a bit weird, but the issues that they deal with are very interesting, and that you really don't get this in other films. Like I said, the three-dimensional conflict between, you know, Woody's dilemma, like, does he want to stay with his family and with his you know, the toys he lives with, and Andy, or does he want to stay with his Roundup gang? You know, and there's that sort of conflict, dilemma. You don't get much of that in other films, and because of that, this makes the film very intriguing and very interesting, and all the other supporting characters get much more to do as well. I mean, they don't necessarily have too much development, apart from probably a couple of them, but they're all along for the ride. They get much more to do. They get involved in the action, because in the first movie, whilst I liked them, they didn't really have an essential place in the story. They were there just because they were other Andy's toys. By these characters, I'm meaning Ham, Potato Head, Rex. Obviously now we have Mrs. Potato Head, who really doesn't do anything. Like, she has one scene at the beginning and the end. Thankfully, her role is expanded upon in Toy Story 3, but we'll get to that film later on. And the voice cast are fantastic. They are just as good, if not even better, than they were in the first one. And all of the new cast members are fantastic. Kelsey Grammer plays a great Stinky Pete. I'm going to call him Stinky Pete. It's easier to do that. And his, I mean, obviously he's not revealed to be the villain until the very end. But, you know, I think it works. It still works. And his view of things is very interesting. When you get his motivations, he doesn't want this chance of glory to be retconned from him. He doesn't want this to be diminished. He wants the glory. He wants people to just admire the Roundup gang for who they are, because they've been basically forgotten because their TV show was cancelled. So he wants to bring them back into the limelight. And when Woody says, "Oh no, I want to go back to Andy," that's obviously going to strike a nerve, and that impulses him to just react on Woody and just attack him. It's like I said, the dilemma is very interesting. The best scene of the film is probably the scene in Al's apartment when all of the toys sort of converge together in this big dramatic scene. I mean, the fact that you're talking about I'm talking about it in this way, and there's a film about toys, is really something. But at its heart, it's a great fun adventure, and it has such a huge heart. There's one scene which I find very interesting as well. The scene when Woody's nightmare scene, let's just say, very dark stuff. The very dark sort of psychological horrors of Woody's nightmares. About being thrown away by Andy, and because of his arm breaking. It was a very, very disturbing scene. Like, it's weird that the Toy Story movies occasionally tend to have very disturbing scenes. I mean, not so much the third movie, I don't think, but the first two. I mean, well, the first one mainly. The first one was really dark and really quite creepy. That scene is similar, but they don't dwell on it too much, which is why I'm kind of glad that this one isn't as dark and disturbing. I think the first one is the scariest of the three, definitely, and it's probably the darkest. Even though the third one's quite dark as well, but they all have their dark moments, I think. The new characters. I like Jessie as well. Jessie's a great character. Joan Cusack voices her brilliantly. The character's so fantastic. She's full of energy. She's just so up for anything. And then the conflict between her and Woody is very interesting. And then once he realises her story and her trauma, he can relate to her. And I think that's very interesting. And the way they display her flashback with the song, it's beautiful. It's really beautifully done. These are the moments that Pixar really hit on. They're very good at displaying emotional moments. They're very good at helping an audience to resonate with their characters, even if their character is like a monster, a talking fish, a toy, a teddy bear, a car, or anything. Not so much the cars, but they're very good at that. And the direction, I think, is really, really good by John Lasseter. He definitely knows what he wants, and it's a nostalgic film as well in that sense as well. And I love the opening scene as well with the sort of video game battle when Buzz flies in and tries to sabotage Zurg. I love the fact they have a Duracell battery as well. That's quite funny. Also, the soundtrack for this movie is great. The music score has that really sort of punchy adventure feel, with the that theme is played constantly, and that's really good. Like the first Toy Story soundtrack was still great, but it didn't have as much of that bombastic feel as this one does. Not that I'm not complaining. I mean, they're both very different, which is great. I would say, there's not. The good thing about Toy Story 2 is that it's not a rinse and repeat. It doesn't basically do the same thing as the first one. It does something very different, and it knows that, and that's great. The only thing they really do that could be considered a similarity is when Buzz says to Woody, "You are a toy," and fuck off, messages, fuck off. When Buzz says to Woody, "You're a toy," that whole speech is kind of retcon, but not really. I mean, it's only ever implied. It's almost like from Buzz's perspective, he thinks Woody is snapping out of sanity. He almost thinks that he's going insane. But as I said, the dilemma is so rich and it's so dramatic and it's so very well placed that it's really hard to really root for anybody, because everybody in this sort of conflict has their own reasons and justifications for this. It's a very interesting conflict, and nobody's really the bad guy. Well, apart from Stinky Pete, but that's what the film decides to do at the end with the protagonist. But you can understand everybody's reasons in this for their decisions, And I think that's the very interesting thing about Toy Story 2. It's a very three-dimensional film in terms of the drama. The drama in the first one was more simplistic, but that's why it worked so well. This is more three-dimensional, and it works even more so because of it. It's like an expansion, which is what the sequel should do, and I'm proud to say that it does that, and that continues in Toy Story 3 as well. The animation, again, is fantastic. I mean, for 1999, it looks really, really impressive. I mean, even today, watching it on Blu-ray, it's amazing how well it's aged. I mean, it obviously doesn't look like photorealistic or anything. I mean, you could say that it's a bit dated, but I still think that it looks fantastic for what it is, and I'm sure that Toy Story 4 is going to look great too, but we'll see. It's a shame that obviously the third one wasn't able to be released until over 10 years after this, but if this was to be the last Toy Story film, it would be a nice sort of ending. I mean, and you know, Woody obviously invites Jessie and Bullseye to come back and, you know, stay with him and Andy, and that's fantastic. You know, giving Jessie a new home like that, and it's a really good story. The comedy's brilliant. It's an animated masterpiece. It really is. There's not much else I can say. I mean, I think I've sort of summed up as best I can. I just think they took a risk, and they put so much. I think in terms of the story, there was more event attached to this. They went bigger and better, and in some cases that doesn't work. But in this case, it does work, and they do a fine, damn good job of it. So yeah, that's really it. That's all I can say about Toy Story 2. I am definitely going to give this film a 10 out of 10.
You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You got troubles, then I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me.
It absolutely is astonishing, and it's one of the best animated films ever, along with the first and the third. It's a great installment in the trilogy. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about Toy Story 2. Tune in at some point when I review Toy Story 3 and the rest of the Pixar movies. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. Thomas11. See ya.